went for a wedding yesterday, my husband and I. It was an absolute positively entertaining event. We had a blast. But the one thing that stuck to me was what the priest said. So we went for, we attended the entire ceremony. So we went to church, got there on time, attended the whole ceremony, and then went to the reception. So at church, it was at a Catholic church. And when the priest was giving his, not sermon, but kind of like, you know how he just talks, gives us a sermon, I guess, about the couple, about weddings, about how the Lord, how weddings are ordained, from above. And yeah, anyway. So he was like, okay, and he was addressing the couple. And then he was like, oh yeah, and I'm going to ask the couple a question. If they don't know it, anyone who knows it, please feel free. So me, I was like, okay, let's see this question now, let's say, I'm sure many people know it. And so he addressed the couple. He was like, what is the difference between complete and finished? And so everyone just kind of had this puzzle for like, the what, say what? So he repeated himself. It was like, what is the difference between complete and finished? Of course, no one knew it. The couple didn't know it. No one. It was like, yeah, raise your hand if you know it. And I looked around, I was like, this kind of question, it can't be like Jambo, like everyone was like scratching their head, like, He then said, okay, it was this, I think it was Vietnamese, but he was Asian, of Asian origin. And he was like, oh, no one knows it? Okay, I'll tell you, guys, don't just forget about it, like, I'll tell you. He goes, when you marry the right person, you are complete. So everyone just busted out laughing. Do you understand? And we're like, oh my goodness, this guy has jokes. We're like, this priest, oh, cool guy. And so all we know that, okay. And then he then said, now when you marry the wrong person, so you're finished. And so everyone was just still like laughing, like, oh my goodness, complete. The whole church just busted out laughing, And then icing on the cake, he was like, now when the wrong person marries the wrong person, you are completely finished. I can't do that. That is, we laughed for minutes. We were just like, but I think bottom line, what he's just trying to say is, when two people decide to get together, that it is because they have found one another. The woman is the rib out of the man's rib cage, and they complement one another. There's something complementary and loving that you see in the other person, and vice versa, and hence you decide to come together to form a union and do this thing called life together. But his anecdote was just, it was just insane. But it got me thinking. I'm like, hey, you know what? I can also apply this to my Tame Your MBM, and in what sense? So think about it this way, right? So when you are complete in yourself, right? When you know your abilities, you are satisfied, you're content. I think that's the word I'm looking for. You're content with your abilities, you're content with your with where you are. Do you understand? You don't envy anyone. Now being content does not mean you do not aspire to much. No, you aspire to much, but you're content. Like trivial things don't faze you. You are complete, right? It's a mindset thing. You're not easily fazed, you're easily forgiven, but it doesn't mean you're weak, right? You just move on because you decide, you know what? Life is too short to just be wasting time on just trivial issues. You're complete. Now, when you decide that you want to be keeping up with the Joneses, right? Anything your neighbor does, you too. You're like, you're like a spy, or you have spyglass or eyeglass or what they call it, binoculars. Anything your neighbor is doing, if your neighbor has just acquired that big, nice brown car, you too, 1, 2, 3, 4, you're going to get your own, whether or not you can afford it. Or if your neighbor has just bought this big house or this big, beautiful furniture or whatever, you too, you're like, yes, I need to change my sofa because I need to, just keeping up with the Joneses. Anything your neighbor does, you too, it's like, yes, oh, my neighbor's children are going to this private school. Yes, me too, my children must go. Whether you can afford it or not, you are finished. Finished. That is the quickest way to be finished. Keeping up with the Joneses. Are you kidding me? Do you know what that does to the psyche? Let's not even talk about mental health. Okay. Now, when are you completely finished? As in, when you have not decided to take that keeping up with the Joneses to the nth degree, as in social media. Now you are emulating everything you see on social media. Maybe there are a few influencers you're seeing and all of that. Anything they do, they go to a nice exotic vacation. You too, you're like, yeah, me self, I must go there. If they're, dressing a certain way or a particular lifestyle, yeah, you too, yeah, you self. You don't even know the context, right? You don't know their context. You don't know their story.